So with the New Mutants trailer and the upcoming Mutants movie in itself, as well as, it being the Halloween season, I decided to bring up this topic because with the upcoming arrival of the New Mutants film and how it's more geared towards a horror film setting, I decided to just talk about, the possibility of future, again, assuming New Mutants does well at the box office. Keep in mind that if it does well at the box office, could we see a trend of other superhero/horror films? Now, you gotta give it to Fox first and foremost for doing this. But on the other hand, this isn't the first time we've had superhero/horror films. And I'll get to that in a moment. But what I mean is that I'm really glad that Fox is, using the X-Men title, using their X-Men license to do stuff differently. With Deadpool, we had a action comedy that was R-rated, and yes, we had R-rated comic book movies in the past, but Deadpool was the one that really kicked open the door. Then we had, again, if Deadpool didn't do well, we probably wouldn't have Logan. And yeah, that's the other thing. Logan was like a modern Western story, more than it was a superhero film. And then we have New Mutants, which is an upcoming horror film with superhero characters. And I know a lot of people do think it's weird that an X-Men movie is a horror-based film, but they are doing a story that is kind of based off of a villain, which I did not know until someone told me. Apparently, yes, the villain of this movie is going to be the Demon Bear. The Demon Bear is this giant psychic energy. Think Pennywise if it was a grizzly. That's the best way to describe the Demon Bear, is that think of it as like Pennywise, the dancing clown from It, just as a giant bear. That's the best way to describe it. Anyway, so I'm actually at peace with that. But like I said, if it does well, could we see more superheroes in horror films? And as a major fan of both superhero films and horror films, I think it's a very open territory. But like I said earlier, this is not the first time we've had superhero/horror films. And we've had several, dark stories, and you could say Blade and Spawn, but really, Blade and Spawn and a few others that come to mind are really kind of, more action-based than horror. They just kind of use the horror as a setup. The only two that really come to mind in terms of superhero/horror films are the sci-fi Man-Thing film, which is, it's really hard. The last time I saw it was on the El Rey network. That was months ago. But yeah, the Man-Thing movie, which was originally a sci-fi film. Remember sci-fi when it was good? Well, when it had, actual good programming. Because I take that back. I actually really enjoy Channel Zero. I take back what I said. Anyway, I just take back what I said. There's some good TV shows on there, but movie-wise, they need to get their shit together. I'm just saying. But yeah, they did a Man-Thing film a while back, and also the other one that really comes to mind, and again, it does kind of go into more action towards the end, is the Constantine film. Granted, not the best example, but still, it did really play with the horror element for a good while until it just slipped into action film. So that's kind of the big thing, is that, yeah. The only real one that comes to mind, even with Constantine, that's not enough, but with the major one that was the horror element, was Man-Thing. And I know Wes Craven did a Swamp Thing movie, but again, that kind of turned more superhero than action, and more drama than horror film. Now, the big thing here is that we are looking at, if New Mutants does well, could we see, horror films and horror stories done with superheroes? And trust me, both Marvel and DC, and even, other companies do have a lot of horror elements. Hell, Todd McFarlane wants to make his Spawn film a horror movie. Which you can do that with Spawn. But on the other hand, it's Todd McFarlane, and he's directing, and he's said multiple times of how much he's going to direct a Spawn movie. I'm still until I see a trailer, I'm going to be like, sure. And admit it, everyone, let's face it, that every time Todd McFarlane talks about a new Spawn movie, you just have to go, sure. But yeah, that's the big thing, is that you can do Spawn with horror. And Yeah, Marvel can do horror. Marvel started one of the major things early Marvel did when they broke away from being Timely Comics. One of the major things that really got them out there in the late 50s, early 60s was a lot of horror-based titles: Man-Thing, Man-Wolf, Werewolf by Night, Frankenstein Monster, The Tomb of Dracula, Ghost Rider was technically a horror story. Yeah, there were a lot of characters. There were a lot of comics, and from DC with House of Secrets as well, and a few others that really put their name on the map for horror stories. And I think Marvel, and again, not Fox Marvel. I should have been a little more clear when I talked about Marvel Marvel this and Marvel that. I should be a little more clear with Fox Marvel and Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, and I'm saying. Do I think we could get a Marvel Cinematic Universe horror movie? Absolutely not. And let me say why. Disney. Disney wants to keep everything PG-13 at most. And, yeah, an R-rated horror film, even a PG-13 horror film, I don't think is going to fly with them. But, however, is it impossible to see horror done out of the MCU? Nope. And I'll tell you where you can find it. Netflix or Hulu. If Runaways does well, which I'm still pissed off I'm not going to be able to watch because I can't afford Hulu and Netflix at the same time, so, and it sucks because I really enjoy Runaways, but I'm getting off track. Anyway, like I was saying, you could, there's obviously Netflix and Marvel, the Marvel Netflix universe has a darker element, and Netflix has really been cranking out some horror stuff as of late. So I think it's a strong possibility that if Marvel and Netflix negotiate another deal, which will be difficult because Disney's pulling out by early 2018 with all their stuff, but I'm not saying it's impossible. They could negotiate another deal with Marvel Netflix to do another series, because right now it's only an X amount of characters they can use. So that's kind of the thing, is that, where was I going? Yeah, you could negotiate another deal and do other shows with other characters and have it be unrated because it would be more under Netflix control than Disney at that point. That's the same thing with Hulu. If Runaways does well and we get more shows out of Hulu, there's also a market for that on that channel. And trust me, like I said, Marvel has enough horror characters to do this. And with Spider-Man back in the Marvel unit, back in the MCU, we could probably you could do Morbius, Morbius the Living Vampire as one. You could do Man-Wolf. And yeah, like I said, there could be Netflix and Hulu shows based around Man-Thing, Tomb of Dracula. Yeah, we could get a Dracula show from Marvel technically. Like I said, Man-Thing. Tomb of Dracula, so many different ways. And again, Sony's talking about how the Venom film will be an R-rated horror type film. And I'm pretty sure, again, they may change it if, depending on how things go. Anywho, I digress. So yeah, and that goes double for DC. DC looks like they're trying to throw... Now, we could probably get an R-rated horror film out of DC because they're just throwing whatever sticks to the wall, right? I mean, that Joker movie that's not going to be in canon with anything. Yeah, it's a little weird. And you could honestly do a horror Joker film. You could do it like a gritty gangster/horror film. And yeah, we do have the Justice League Dark movie still in development. Keyword in development, which could lead to a horror film, but I'm pretty sure it'll be more action than horror. But that's not to say you could do horror films with the DC characters in their own film. I would love to see a Hellblazer movie, a Hellblazer movie reboot, and have it be more horror-centric. Same thing with a new Swamp Thing movie. Even Etrigan would be really cool to have his own movie and have it an R-rated horror. But what I'm saying, what I'm saying is, it's a little difficult, because it's still, even with the minor showing we have, and with New Mutants, it's still uncharted territory. It's not a norm. I think a lot of what's if New Mutants does well, Again, that really depends on if New Mutants does well, then could we see, Marvel, at least Netflix and Hulu-wise, do shows based around their horror characters, because they've done stuff with Ghost Rider, but that's more action. I would preferably like to see a horror. I think you could do. You could still do a Ghost Rider show, but set it with Johnny Blaze or Dan Ketch, and have it be more horror. I mean, if you want action stuff, you can keep Robbie Reyes, which is totally fine. But if you want to do the more horror aspects and keep it with superhero stuff, then you can do Dan Ketch or Johnny Blaze, or you can do Hannibal King. The Midnight Suns. Yeah, you could do Midnight Suns. Sadly without Doctor Strange. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling at this point. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's still uncharted waters. That's all I'm saying, is that it's still kind of uncharted waters. Even with the Man-Thing film, it's a bit So, all I'm saying is I think a lot of it's going to depend on how well New Mutants does, which I am very excited for. So you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think of superhero films and becoming horror films? And what characters would you like to see that done with? Anyway, once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later.